Hi people, in the previous video I've sampled 3 instruments to build this sound. And today I look over the sampler and talk about all the features and let's dig in. The first sampler ever released was the Fairlight CMI in 1979. And it was a computer dedicated for sampling. It wasn't only just a machine or something. Actually, last year Arturia released a VST that actually recreated inside your DAW, and you can use it, link in the description. The sampler is for instruments that are not accessible for your next future, or to create new instrument using instrument that you already own, that it might be difficult to build new from scratch. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you go in Africa and you find a 90-year-old dude that actually is playing a guitarish thing in his hand made by himself, it's very rare that you go back in Africa and he is still alive and he can play it for you and come in your studio to play on top of your truck. Before he dies from starvation, whatever, record his guitar and waste some raining day in your flat to make it available also for you in the future. I've recorded the samples that I'm using in this instrument today in my previous video for time reasons. You can watch it if you want to get good in getting samples from things, and be aware that it's a very boring and a very long, time-consuming thing, as having a girlfriend, plus or minus. Maybe it's actually free to do this stuff, so yeah, it's better to have samples. But if you love sound design, today we do sound design and sound on sound. On the zone page, you can actually find all the slices that you recorded and whatever, mapped, routed. Watch my previous video to do all this mess, and I name it differently so I know what instrument they are, but you can always like select them. For example, if you go here in the selector, you have actually this thing that you can drag around from 0 to 127 as a MIDI thing, and you have these blue slices. You have this blue thing for every slice. If you drag the blue thing, will be not playable, like if the player is here, if the selector or whatever it's called, it's until 16, this note will be played. But if it's like here, if you press these slice, it won't play because it's not selected. You can also make a fade in by selecting the white thingy. Doing this, you will fade in by like slicing it on, like, okay, you got it. You can do this for all the slices together. For example, if you select all of them and you do this, bam, they're moving, you see? Very nice. And what I did here is like at 0, only the piano, here is nothing, you see, only the piano will play. If I go slightly more, also the pad will introduce itself, and more, also the bass until 127, when the bass actually it's only playing with the piano. You can actually map this selector to a macro. For example, if you group the instrument, just press Command G or Control G for Windows, and here you have the macros, right? If you go in selector, you can map this to macro 1, for example. Sample selector. And now you can move it by there. Or sure, you have it on the push or whatever MIDI controller you're using. And we said that 75, 76 was, we kind of have all the instrument together. You can also map the velocity, like you can also arrange what instrument should play around which velocity. For example, you can select that the piano is not playing if you're playing very, let's say, very quiet, like this. You see one, but if you press harder and harder, you can also use the velocity as a selector, so you don't have to select them, but it's up to you. Instead of using the selector, you can also have three different samplers in three different chains. If you open here the chain selector, or the chains, whatever, I said selector 5 times, like fuck. So if you open here the selecting, you can create a new chain. You can create, for example, 3 chains like this, color them in different colors, so you know what it is. Kind of, you can rename them. If you want, you command R, whatever, and you can actually duplicate this instrument to the other. So you have, like, for example, you can take this to one other chain, like here, and remove the pad, for example, in the other one remove the piano, and etc, etc, and you have 3 different instruments in chains. Then you can also actually do the same thing with the chain selector, and having a selector here in the chain thingy here, and you can actually change how they will be played in the same way of what we saw before in the selector, as a volume changer, or as a velocity changer, or as a key changer. Like you can select the key range of all of them, and yeah, it's nice. And you have also the volume. If you want to mix it by yourself, you can, it's more flexible like this, but it's up to you. Here in the sample folder, let's say folder, we have this page. All about this page is about like sample thing. For example, sample. I'm always saying sample. If we play this note, it's this one, you see? It's playing. Yeah, it's playing. And everything here in this page, it can change only that selected slice. So if you do this, you're only moving the volume to 24 to only the selected slices, not to the other. If you select another one, it won't be so loud. Clear? Same for whatever, for interpolation, for detune and whatever. I think interpolation and reverse. Oh, let's play in reverse. Reverse, it's for all of them. Interesting. There is an info view here. There is like an info box that you can just press this arrow and it will show itself, or you can press shift with the, I don't know, interrogative point. How to say that in English? I have no idea. Why I'm making this video in English? It sucks. Second folder, box, whatever. We have an oscillator that is modulating with FM or AM, and we have a pitch envelope, very useful, I love it. Oscillator, you have an FM modulation, frequency modulation. You're actually modifying your sound, that is the carrier, with a sound wave or with a waveform that is decided here by these a lot of people here. And with the volume, you don't decide the volume in general, you decide how much the sine in this moment it's influencing your sound, it's modifying your sound at the course of 2, and the course is actually the frequency that is modifying it. If you select 1, it's the same frequency as the modulation, it's like the standard, but you can select more and more and more and more and more until you don't become mad. And you can go, but you can go also lower. That's what I love, going lower. Oops. The envelope is very useful because you can control how these frequency modulation or amplitude modulation it's getting inside your sound, let's say like this. And you can actually going like very slowly, something like this, but you can create an interesting, let's say, sound out of it. With AM, you're modulating the volume of the carrier. You're modulating the amplitude of it, and it's a bit distorting. You feel that. The pitch envelope, it's very clear what it does. It just like pitch shift your thing. So if you say amount plus, when it does this, when it goes up, it will go down afterwards. So if you start up, more down you go, more it will go down the sound. It will start going up, but then it will drop down with the decay, with the sustain, sorry. This is very useful usually for sound designing, for arcade games or something like this. For music, interesting sometimes. To fine tune something, like for example for fine tune a bass, or to have that drop in the start or something like this. Then spread, whatever. We are going to the whatever page filter and global. For global, it means we have actually a VCA that actually have the volume, sure, how the velocity influences the volume, and an ADSR if we want to use it. We have like, if we want a long attack. But why I'm explaining this? It's self-explanatory. And sure, if you want a bit of release, that actually was missing. The filter here is very nice because you can actually decide the circuit, for example. that you can decide if there is a distortion and how the distortion depends on the circuit you select. You can select the slope of it, 24, 12 decibel per octave. You have the resonance, you have different filters that you can use. You have a filter envelope and how it will affect the filter. Unfortunately, it doesn't move when actually it's starting to act, and this I'm very sad about it, but you can hear it. You have a shaper on the volume and you can turn it on and have a bit more distortion on your sound. Just add a bit of it. You have the amount here, so it's just like, let's you can have some distortion. And with the arrow here, you can select if it goes before or after the filter. So the workflow here, it just goes in the filter, and the filter is controlled by an envelope that goes through a shaper, then through the VCA, something like this. You can also select that the shaper is before the filter, so you can filter the distortion, for example. Like, this is the distorted sound, but if I do this, I will just take away the distortion. I have only a slight saturation on the bottom. But if I do this, let's make it more obvious. The sound is darker because you actually filter from 1K here. You're just like removing everything if you put the shaper afterwards, and yeah, you got the point. Modulation. This is another interesting page. In the modulation page, you have 3 LFOs and 1 auxiliary that it's an extra envelope. You can map the extra envelope to whatever you want, kind of, unfortunately. You can have like sample selector and whatever. You can make also with the sample selector is actually the knob we are controlling here. So we can actually make it move when we do stuff. Unfortunately, it doesn't see here how it moves, so it's only perceptible by here. But whatever, you can change whatever you want. With LFO as well, you can change, for example, the filter. You can bump it to beats. You can change the attack of it. Then you have other 2 LFOs here just to do whatever you want. And you can also map the one to the other, like to change the rate, to change the amount and whatever. So it's more, let's say, creative. I like also the main instrument, how I created it, and I like how it sounds already. I like this kind of travel that it has by itself. You don't need, I don't think it needs a lot of things, like for example maybe a filter that opens kind of slowly. It can be nice, for example in the bass lines. Maybe drive it a bit. very nice. I like the travel it has. It can be also a bit longer maybe and open it up completely just by like in the middle octaves. Just to get this low travel. Kind of very spacey already. So the modulation, I barely use it. I don't use it kind of never. You can actually have a bit of vibrato after something like this. Just turn on the LFO, bit of volume vibrato. Something like this. That can also be adjusted on a key, and you can re-trigger it if necessary, but you can have like something like this. Maybe it's too quick. You can also change the pitch. Okay, in the MIDI you can actually map, for example, the mode wheel or whatever. Actually, I don't have anything on it. We have also the pitch bend that we can actually modify it from 5 to whatever, 24 semitones, or also lower to 0. But very glitchy. But we can actually use the pitch bend for other things. For example, to map the filter frequency. Why not? We didn't set the amount. 100%. If you think that an envelope is not necessary, like you don't have enough thing here to work with, you have also this possibility. You can use the aftertouch as well. Like if you want to use the aftertouch, you can use the aftertouch, for example, for, I don't know, for the frequency as well, that actually just make it very hard, so you can like the aftertouch of the push. It's so hard, it's so strong. I don't know why, but yeah, maybe because it's made in Germany. They just make hard things. So I think the sampler is pretty much here. For sure, you can map any of these parameters through the macro there. So you have also everything on the push and whatever. Like you can map, for example, the frequency in macro 2. You can map, for example, the resonance. Why not? So you have it right here on the MIDI controller, and you can modify them while playing. And you can make automation pretty easy, and you have everything more accessible, let's say like this. You understand.